The Doctrines and Practice of Nichiren Shoshu, Chapter 4, Hosshaku Kempon, Discarding the Provisional Identity and Revealing the True Identity. The Tatsunakuchi Persecution. Nichiren Daishonin suffered many persecutions simply because of his efforts to propagate the true law. There were 4 major persecutions and countless minor ones. Among them, the Tatsunakuchi persecution had truly profound significance. This event was the Hosshaku Kempon of Nichiren Daishonin, where he discarded his provisional identity and revealed his true identity. On January 18th, in the 5th year of Bunei, 1268, the Kamakura government received an official document from Mongolia, following the expansion of its territory and power in the continents of Asia and Europe. They requested the opening of amicable relations with Japan. The real intent behind this request was to make Japan a vassal state. The document implied a military invasion if Japan refused. Thus, the possibility of the disaster of foreign invasion began to materialize as predicted 8 years earlier by the Daishonin in his Risho on Kokoron. The Kamakura shogunate immediately ordered Japan's major temples and shrines to pray for the suppression of the Mongolians. Defense measures were strengthened in the western region to deal with the imminent national crisis. Due to the Daishonin's serious concern, he observed the situation and dispatched, quote, the rationale for submitting the Rishon Kokoron, unquote, Gosho, page 367, to Hokambo on April 15, 1268. In this, he stressed that his prediction of the disaster of foreign invasion would very likely come true. He remonstrated with the political leaders, informing them that the only effective preventive measure would be to embrace the true law. He also dispatched letters twice in August and September to Yadoya Nyodo, but received no response. The Daishonin then composed 11 more letters of remonstration on October 11th and sent them to various political leaders of the Kamakura shogunate, such as Hojo Tokimune, Yadoya Nyodo, and Hei no Simon Nojo Yoritsuna. In addition, he sent letters demanding a public debate with the religious leaders in the city of Kamakura, such as Kenchoji Doryo and Gokurakuji Roikan. Again, these letters were ignored. However, Gokurakuji Roikan was primarily responsible for spreading rumors about the Daishonin, and as a result of this, many powerful leaders in the Hojo clan and their wives or widows began to view the Daishonin as evil. A few years passed calmly without any major disturbance. However, in the summer of the 8th year of Bunei, 1271, there was a long drought throughout the nation. The Kamakura shogunate turned to Gokurakuji Roikan, who was the most eminent and widely respected monk and viewed by some even as a living Buddha. The government ordered him to pray for rain. Knowing well Roikan's evil nature, the Daishonin used the opportunity to challenge him. The purpose was to refute Roikan and his heretical teachings and to reveal the correct doctrine of the Lotus Sutra. The Daishonin dispatched the following verbal message: if rain falls during the next 7 days, I, Nichiren, shall become the disciple of sage Roikan. However, if no rain comes during these 7 days, you shall surrender to me. Gosho, page 1131 and 1144. Together with more than 120 disciples, Roikan began his prayer in earnest. They all prayed just as if they were, quote, emitting smoke from their heads and lifting up their voices into heaven, unquote. Gosho, page 1131. Beginning on June 18th, they prayed for rain. After 7 days, however, no rain had fallen. They prayed for another 7 days and more until July 4th, but not a single drop of rain fell. Instead, a huge gale began to blow, and the populace worried about the appearance of strange, unseasonable weather. Completely defeated, Roikon sought revenge against the Daishonin, and using the name Jokomyoji Gyobin challenged the Daishonin to a private debate. In his reply, the Daishonin stated, quote, "Not in private, but a public debate shall be done after receiving the approval of the shogunate government," Gosho, page 472. Again, using the name Gyopin Roikon together with other priests, they filed a petition of complaint with the government administrative tribunal accusing the Daishonin of wrongful abuse. In accordance with the legal procedures of the time, the Daishonin was required to submit a response or a counter-opinion. The Daishonin submitted a document stating that this petition was totally false. Roikon's plot failed, and they abandoned their plan of attacking the Daishonin publicly. Roikon and his cohorts then tried to turn the wives and the widows of the present and most powerful men in the ruling Hojo clan, such as Hojo Shigetoki and Hojo Tokiyori, against the Daishonin. They were repeatedly lied to about the Daishonin's supposed abuses and slanders. Finally, the Kamakura government took punitive measures against the Daishonin. The officials held a series of preliminary meetings to discuss an actual trial in order to penalize him. They requested that the Daishonin appear at the administrative tribunal. Heino Simon Nojo was the officer questioning the Daishonin. In a dignified manner, the Daishonin stated the truth and added the following stern remonstration. "If you irrationally penalize me, Nichiren, the two disasters of internal strife and foreign invasion shall take place, and you shall repent." Gosho, page 867. The government then secretly decided to execute the Daishonin at Tatsunokuchi. Publicly, however, he was sentenced to banishment to Sado Island. This decision was made utterly disregarding the, quote, effective basic law, unquote. On the evening of September 12th, Heino Simon Nojo and several hundred of his warriors attacked the Daishonin's lodging. They acted as if they were arresting a dangerous criminal under suspicion of trying to overthrow the nation. Having captured the Daishonin, they put him on horseback and in the dark of night left for Tatsunokuchi. On the way, they came to Wakimiya Avenue in front of the gate to Hachiman Shrine. The Daishonin alighted from his horse and reprimanded the great Bodhisattva Hachiman. He said, "Where is your vow to the Buddha to protect the votary of the Lotus Sutra? Are you truly a god? Nichiren is now on the way to the execution site. Hurry up and carry out your mission vowed at Eagle Peak." Osho, page 1059. They then proceeded to Tatsunokuchi. As they approached the gate of the Goryo Shrine, the Daishonin dispatched someone to inform Shijo Kingyo, who lived nearby, of what was happening. Shijo Kingyo and his three brothers immediately came to the Daishonin. Grasping the reins of his horse, they accompanied the Daishonin to Tatsunokuchi. With tears flowing, Shijo Kingyo vowed that if the Daishonin were beheaded, he would take his own life. Arriving at the Tatsunokuchi execution site, Shijo Kingyo again burst into tears, saying, quote, "Alas, now is the time," unquote. However, the Daishonin instructed Kingyo in a rather surprising manner, stating, "How superficial is your understanding? You should laugh at such an enjoyable event as this. Why do you break the promise you made to me in the past?" Showing Kingyo what resolute determination really is, he calmly seated himself at the execution site. Then, at the very moment that the executioner drew his large sword from its scabbard and positioned himself behind the Daishonin, a shining object as large as the moon suddenly flew across the sky from the direction of Enoshima Island. It was in the midst of the deep darkness between the hour of the ox and the hour of the tiger. This object illuminated the faces of all those assembled at Tatsunokuchi. In shock, they simply stared at one another. The executioner was dazed by the dazzling light, and he fell to the ground. Among the others, some ran, terrified, as far as one Cho, and some jumped off their horses and laid face down on the ground, while still others remained motionless as they cowered on their horses. All of them were unable to move. The Daishonin loudly urged, "What will happen if dawn breaks? You must hurry up and execute me if you wish to do so. Once the day breaks, this scene may be unsightly." Gosho, page 1060. No one, however, would approach the Daishonin. There was a long silence. The execution attempt was a complete failure, and it was decided that the Daishonin would be held in custody at the residence of Lord Honma at Eichi in Sagami Province, presently Kanagawa Prefecture, for the time being. The emergence of the shining object is truly mystic. There has been a lot of speculation about this phenomena. Some said that it was just a coincidence that it occurred at the time of the attempted execution. Others said that the object was probably a meteor or a shooting star. There have been scholars who denied the event itself simply because it was, quote, scientifically unbelievable, unquote. However, we should point out the following two facts. The first is the timing. This mystic phenomena took place at the very moment of the Daishonin's imminent execution. The second is the attitude of the soldiers. Even though the executioner in charge became dazed and then collapsed, it would only make sense that one of the numerous other soldiers present could perform the execution instead. Strict orders had been given to execute the Daishonin. Why couldn't these gallant samurai warriors carry out their mission? It would have been unthinkable that a strong-willed samurai in the Kamakura period would be unable to execute a prisoner because of a mysterious natural phenomena. However, this phenomena was based on the heart of the votary of the Lotus Sutra, which powerfully impacted nature and the universe. In other words, the very moment of this wondrous event was the time that Nichiren Daishonin would reveal his true identity as the Buddha of intrinsically perfect wisdom from Kuon Ganjo, or his identity as the original Buddha of the remotest past. After the Tatsunokuchi persecution, Nichiren Daishonin was banished to Sado Island, where he stated, "The person named Nichiren was beheaded during the hours of the rat and the ox on September 12th last year. This is his soul that has reached Sado province, and this soul wrote down this document during the snowy weather in February of the following year. Sending it to his close disciples, the readers may well understand how fearful are the difficulties I have suffered and how fearless my mind was, is, and will be." Gosho, page 563. 26th High Priest Nichiren Shonin discussed this passage in his, quote, commentary on, quote, the opening of the eyes, unquote, Kaimoku Sho, regarding the passage, quote, beheaded during the hours of the rat and the ox, unquote. Nichiren Shonin indicated that the, quote, the hour of the rat, unquote, was the time the Daishonin was taken from Kamakura, and that the, quote, the hour of the ox, unquote, was the time he was seated at the execution grounds at Tatsunokuchi. These are the persecutions described in the, quote, fortitude, unquote, kanji 13th chapter of the Lotus Sutra as, quote, attack us with swords and staves, unquote, Kaiketsu, page 375. This statement, quote, this is his soul that has reached Sado province, unquote, corresponds to the passage in the, quote, fortitude, unquote, chapter, quote, again and again we will be banished, unquote. Therefore, the Daishonin is the votary of the Lotus Sutra, expounded as, quote, I do not care about my life, I only cherish the supreme way, unquote. The above interpretation is based on the surface meaning of the words, Nichikan Shonin concluded that the true intent of this passage from the Gosho is to reveal the true identity of the Daishonin. He is the original Buddha of Kuon-ganjo, unveiling his twofold provisional identity of a common mortal at the stage of Myoji. Nichikan Shonin states that this passage is explicit proof of the Daishonin's revelation of his true identity. Nichikan Shonin also pointed out that the Buddha's time of enlightenment is between the hours of the ox and the tiger. In quote, reply to Lord Ueno, unquote, the Daishonin stated, all Buddhas in the three existences attain Buddhahood between the ending of the hour of the ox, after the hour of the rat, and the beginning of the hour of the tiger. Gosho, page 1361. Quote, the ending of the hour of the ox after the hour of the rat, unquote, means the death of the identity of the Daishonin as a common mortal at the stage of Myoji. This, therefore, was expressed by the word, quote, beheaded, unquote, quote, the beginning of the hour of the tiger, unquote, means the birth of the original Buddha at the very beginning of the remotest past. Since the Buddha's body and the Buddha's land are two, but one, every place where Nichiren suffers persecutions is the Buddha land. Japan within the Saha world, Sagami province within Japan, in Katase of Sagami province, at Tatsunokuchi in Katase is where Nichiren's life remains. Since he gave his life for the sake of the Lotus Sutra, Tatsunokuchi may be called the land of tranquil light. Gosho, page 478 to 479. Herein, the Daishonin expounds that Tatsunokuchi is the Buddha's land and the Daishonin himself is the Buddha's body. These 2 points demonstrate that Nichiren is the true Buddha. The Daishonin awakened to the fact that he was the reincarnation of Bodhisattva Jogyo. After invoking the 5 or 7 characters of the Daimoku for the first time on April 28th in the 5th year of Kensho, 1253, he continuously condemned the heretical schools and doctrines and remonstrated with the sovereign. As a result, the 3 powerful enemies appeared. By physically living every passage of the Lotus Sutra, the Daishonin proved himself to be the votary of the Lotus Sutra as predicted by Shakyamuni Buddha. The truth of the Lotus Sutra was proven. Finally, the Daishonin revealed his true identity as the original Buddha of Kuon-ganjo while seated at the execution site at Tatsunokuchi. Let us review the revealing of the Daishonin's true identity at Tatsunokuchi. The common mortal Nichiren, from the outward appearance of Bodhisattva Jogyo, is revealed to be the inner, self-awakened, original Buddha of the remotest past. In other words, the common mortal Nichiren is spontaneously revealed to be the Buddha of intrinsically perfect wisdom. Therefore, before this revelation, we may consider the true identity of the common mortal Nichiren to be Bodhisattva Jogyo. However, after the revelation, it is quite clear that Nichiren is the true Buddha and Bodhisattva Jogyo is only the outward appearance and the provisional identity. Naturally, after this revelation, the name of the person changed from Bodhisattva Jogyo to Nichiren. The name of Nichiren is the true status and reality thereafter. Furthermore, the quote, phase of conquering devils, unquote, one of the 8 phases of the Buddha's existence, is the one of the indispensable events for the enlightenment of Buddhas in the 3 existences. At the execution site at Tatsunokuchi, the 3 powerful enemies appeared. The Daishonin was about to physically read with his entire life the 20-line verse section of the, quote, Fortitude, unquote, Kanji, 13th chapter, the devil of the sixth heaven himself had intended to kill the Daishonin there. However, the magnificent dignity of the Daishonin vanquished the devil, and the Buddha body of the remotest past was revealed. Quote, the soul, unquote, expounded in the, quote, opening of the eyes, unquote, was the soul of the true Buddha at the very beginning of the remotest past. The Tatsunokuchi persecution was the unveiling of the Daishonin's provisional identity of Bodhisattva Jogyo and the revelation of its true identity as the original Buddha of the remotest past. The status of the Daishonin caused even the execution site at Tatsunokuchi to reveal the Buddha's land. In his, quote, commentary on the Great Concentration and Insight, unquote, Kugetsu, Miyalo states, when the time of enlightenment accords with the original principle, the body and the heart are omnipresent in the universe, unquote. Before his banishment to Sado Island, Nichiren Daishonin stayed at Aichi in Sagami Province for more than 20 days. The day before he was to leave for Sado Island on October 9th, Nichiren Daishonin inscribed the Gohonzon for the first time. It would be the manifestation of the fact that his inner self-awakened realization was that of the true Buddha. The Tatsunokuchi persecution was the most significant persecution in the Daishonin's life. It signified the revelation of the true identity of Nichiren Daishonin, the true Buddha. As disciples and believers, let us express our heartfelt gratitude for the courageous and strenuous efforts made by Nichiren Daishonin.
you.